know, over 60 million books worldwide, and less than 100,000, which is less than 2% of all of those books, sell more than one copy a day. We never use AI in the writing process,
Right.
meaning we don't use AI for writing. All the other tools, it's almost like you would use a shovel when there's a tractor out there, right? You know, it's just like you always have a reason to use the shovel. You can. I am yet to meet a person, no matter what kind of investment they made, time or money, or both, or add some additional things, who became an author and regrets becoming an author and getting that job done.
Hello, team. Many of you know that I'm an avid reader. I love books, and perhaps some of you may even share a similar passion. Yet, how often do we pause and consider the author, as well as the journey that they've been on, the effort that they've made to feed our interests, and why they would hope to do so? What's in it for them? Now, we know, of course, that if done well, a book becomes a powerful tool and it can serve each of us in many ways, whether we're entrepreneurs or leaders. And during today's episode, I'm really pleased to be joined by Ben Cena. Ben is the CEO of High Value Author, and we're going to break down a few questions and explore some of the key areas around why we should write books. Why should a leader or an entrepreneur consider writing a book? What type of book would make the most impact for them or the most sense? How would they measure the success beyond the sale itself? And of course, the inevitable question that I'm sure everyone is thinking about at the moment, how is AI changing the publishing game in this case? And what's the future of that look like? So whether you're trying to build your legacy, whether you're looking to boost your brand, I'm pretty sure that our conversation today is likely to change how you see authorship in general. With that, let's get started. We'll welcome Ben to the show. Mr. Cena, welcome to the ET Project.
Wayne, thanks for having me.
Now, Ben, I think the first time we connected, you were sitting in Dubai. I believe you've hopped on a plane and you've flown home for a little while. What's happening at the moment?
Well, I'm just enjoying life. No, I'm just joking because, Dubai is a great place, but I have to come back home from time to time. I know I miss the trees, I miss all these things. I think it's important for us as entrepreneurs. We have to breathe sometimes, get out of our offices and things like that. So I think it's important, and feel that come back home from time to time as well. But busy as always.
And where are you sitting at the moment?
I'm in Lithuania, so in my chair in my office, it doesn't change much. I couldn't really tell, if I'm in Dubai or here or in UK in London, because the same chair, the same background, everything is the same. The moment I leave the front door, I exit, then the things start to change. Then I know where I am, or I check the time
Well,
zone.
I'm sure, and I can imagine that each of those countries that you mentioned are very starkly different. So I can imagine outside the door, it is quite contrasting. Why don't we start off with getting you to share a little bit about your background and how you found your way in this whole world of book writing and publishing.
Of course, man. So about 7 years ago, now it's 2025. 6, 7 years ago, my colleague introduced me to the publishing industry. It was called self-publishing at the time. It was the early days of
Mm.
self-publishing. And I never thought actually that I'm gonna be in such a business. I hated reading, you know. I think that was because we were kind of conditioned in high school and even earlier that we have to read these fictional books, all these boring stuff. I didn't really like them. I like watching movies, not really reading. But then I discovered the power of a nonfiction, which is where I really am. and knowledge and getting knowledge. People are buying knowledge.
Right.
People buy knowledge in the form of a book. People love books. Fascinating thing. So back in 2018, 2017, we decided to create a self-publishing business, a company. We sold later for a small sum.
Hmm.
And then we realized, and when I say we, me and my business partner back in the day, that okay, we can really self-publish so many great books. Why authors or wannabe authors, why can't we help them? There are so many books out there, millions, tens of millions at that time, now over 60 million
Right.
books worldwide, and less than 100,000, which is less than 2% of all of those books, sell more than one copy a day.
Mm.
This is a fascinating thing to know, and there are tools, there are ways to actually people get readers to see those books, and authors have no idea, right? So why don't we help them? And that's where we made the transition to creating a high value author and really helping authors to get seen and use their books to their full potential beyond sales. We are
Mm.
talking about speaking, podcast like we are talking right now, right? Leveraging, getting connections in their industry, creating networks, all these kind of things. Because usually authors just put their stuff out there. We think the hard work is done. The moment they click that publishing button, oh, I'm finished. No, I'm not finished. No, it's for most people, it's not job is not done. This was not the goal in the first place.
Right. It's it is a fascinating business, and I've had the privilege to write a couple of books, and the journey itself is very fascinating. What is it that High Value Author does as a business? How do you help the prospective authors along that journey? What services do you provide?
Well, in the beginning, we were trying to help two kinds of authors: authors who just have an idea,
Mm.
or authors who already have something put together, meaning some sort of a manuscript, something written, a full draft, partial draft. Now we are more focused on authors who just have an idea, right? It's easier to work with them, but generally we help authors from the idea stage all the way to becoming a bestseller on Amazon and getting in all the different media outlets, podcasts, etc. So the whole journey of
Right.
creating, publishing, marketing. So we can just sit back, uh, revise, look at what's happening, and see if they're happy with that. Now, most of our
Mm.
clients are entrepreneurs, people who really have great ideas. We know what they want, but we don't have the time, right? And
Mm.
that's where we come in.
Nice. Do you have a particular genre? Like, I know you're doing nonfiction, but is there a particular type of client that tends to gravitate towards your
Yeah,
services?
it's usually business. It's usually business, self-help combination.
Hmm.
It's usually a person who has some sort of experience, learned the lessons along the way, sometimes in a particular specific industry, sometimes more general, and they really want to share that experience, establish the expertise,
Right.
and build those networks. So it really is more in business because people are more inclined to get it done, because for most people, in other categories, they don't have this sense of urgency. They don't
Mm.
have mm, this thing where, okay, I want to get this done this year. They don't have
Right.
that. So in business
Yeah.
people, they are more like, okay, I want to get this done.
To that point, how long does it typically take from beginning to, well, if there is actually an end, I'm not sure there is, but to the release point. Let's pick that milestone. So how long does it normally take from the beginning of the journey to the point of release to the market?
It's usually anywhere between 4 and 7 months. There are some people who are extremely responsive. We can work fast. We love speed. It's usually much more productive and effective. But the general uh, is usually between timeline between 4 and 7 months is where there are some big projects like big books, more in like science kind of category that we work for 12 months, but as a general rule, like 4 to 7 months is we could say is the finish line to becoming not just publishing but also becoming a bestseller, for example.
Okay. Okay. So, what are the key phases on that journey? If we were to chunk it down, where do you start, and what are the boxes you tick as you go along the process?
No, we always look because there are key phases for the client and there are the key phases for us,
Right.
right? And they're
Yeah.
not always the same.
Yeah.
Uh, but usually the key kind of points, the most important kind of steps of the journey are in the very beginning, where we are crafting the title and the cover and creating the cover. That combination, that power duo, power couple is the most important thing, beyond any marketing. I always call it like a rock. If you have really nice rock, round rock, that's a good cover and title combination. You can just push it, it rolls, right? And if you have a rocky rock like with angles and stuff, that's what marketing is. You put in some marketing, it doesn't roll. You cannot push that kind of rock.
Mm.
So that combination is the key. And then there is finding the voice, the style, and capturing the style of the author. That's
Right.
usually in the beginning phases of the writing process. And then, of course, the publishing stage, where we get the book out there and get it to number one bestseller. Probably these are the key points throughout the whole process.
Mm. Why would I, as a leader, think about having a book? Like, what are some of the benefits that come as a consequence of having a bestseller?
Well, it really depends, because sometimes, rarely, we have to kind of, in a nice way, fight with our clients because they want things a certain way,
Mm.
but not necessarily this is the best way in terms of what they want, right? For example, I want to get to this point, and they say, okay, I want it to be this way, but that's not the best path to get there,
Mm.
right? So sometimes if your goal is to, okay, I want to have a book that for this audience, here's what I want to do with them. I want to leave a legacy behind in
Yep.
this kind of way. How do we do this? Right? If these are your set of goals, okay, you probably should have a book, and
Hmm.
that's where we come in. Uh, if your goal is to, for example, have a memoir, right? And it really depends, because
Right.
people are in different stages. Some people think they want to have a book. Some people
Mm.
think they want to have this like a marketing piece, right? Like a legacy piece. Now there are different reasons for having it, because
Yep.
now before we start working with clients, we always have a very strict pre-qualification process, so we know, okay, we can ask them what exactly do they want, not
Yep.
in terms of what kind of book they want, but why do we want this book?
Mm.
What is the reason? And sometimes we have to get through all the smokes and mirrors. You know, what is actually the reason? Is it a financial reason, right?
Yeah.
Do you want to make money, right? Is it a networking reason? Is it a legacy reason? No. And once those questions are answered, then we can say, okay, you should have a book. You should have this kind of book. Does that make sense? And then we
Mm.
come to an agreement.
Right. And I can imagine that could be quick, or that could take some time. As you said, the the individual's not always essentially clear on that why, right? But essentially, you're trying to get to the purpose. You're trying to understand the goal. And once you have that, you
The
can
why has to be strong. We have to dig
yeah.
deep and understand the why. Because It's not a quick process. The process takes, as we talked, 4 to 7 months. We want that motivation to keep climbing along the way rather
Mm,
than, okay, we lost motivation. Okay, it's very hard to come back. That's why so many people have these little pieces and drafts, and then they ask a question, when did you put this draft together? It's like 7 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. You know, usually it's more difficult to work with these people unless they have a strong sense of urgency. Something is coming up. We have a big reason. Otherwise, that cycle just repeats. But
mm.
you have to, most people should have a book. If you are an expert in your field and you don't have a book, well, you have to have some other very strong points to make a statement.
Now, do you offer ghostwriting as part of the service, or do you require the client to do the writing themselves?
No, 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 no. Our shtick is that we help people throughout the whole process, with them spending less than 30 hours throughout the whole 7 months. So we do everything from
Okay,
end to end, and they can be involved as much or as little as they want.
right.
Ideally, the more involved, the better the
Yeah,
outcome is, not in terms of the quality, but rather what they want. And then there aren't inconsistencies at the end where we say, okay, it was so amazing, and now I want to add this, change the other thing. But
right.
usually, we do the whole thing from end to end.
And does that therefore includes any research that's required, or how do you cope with that type of situation where the book, because it's nonfiction, so there's a degree of factual content. How do you handle that?
Well, it depends on the situation. Each scenario is different, but there are different scenarios. For example, sometimes we set up a case study deck. The author imagines that he has so many examples from the past
Right.
and so many stories. Almost every single time we do something and we set up a portfolio of stories of voice recordings, that helps so much with the outline and the whole flow of the book, right?
Mm,
So there's a lot of step-by-step fundamentals that we found our way. And actually, one of the keys are those voice recordings or even recordings like we are recording right now. That
yeah.
helps us to get to the essence of entrepreneur. And we work with 95% entrepreneurs, and people who are watching this are probably entrepreneurs, or they want to be. So that helps to get in their mind, inside their
Mm,
minds, and we set it up in a way we help them to create a habit of moving around, driving in their car, recording all these things, and we managed to create this effortless process. So I think this is why people work with us as well.
right. Right. And I can imagine at the beginning, you also do a lot of work on identifying, what is the type of publication? Is it going to be hard copy, soft copy, Kindle? To use Amazon's methodology, are you going to make an audible book? Like there must be a lot of these types of pre-qualifying questions, are there?
Rarely, because we almost always are in all four formats, meaning the ebook, the paperback, hardback, and Audible. In
Right.
rare situations where the book is specific, scientific, technical, we don't need and we don't want an audiobook. Doesn't make sense, like a cookbook, right? It wouldn't make sense. There are a few projects like that we take. We don't really like them as
Mm,
much, but generally that's not even a question, because people love and people have their ways to consume content and consume books and read books. Some people love ebooks. I hate ebooks personally, right? I can say it up front. I just hate ebooks. I don't like them. Right? I
right.
love physical books. They have all over the place. I love audiobooks, right? I don't really care about if it's paperback or hardback. Some people care. So we just
Mm.
do all of them. It's really not a discussion really. Uh, Maybe it used to be 20 years ago because there have been different structures, but now it's pretty straightforward. We want to have them in all formats.
Just digressing, but on that point about the soft copy versus hard copy, is there a shift in the trend worldwide with less hard copy books today than there used to be?
I think pricing has a big impact because
Right.
hard copies are so much more expensive than paperbacks.
Yeah.
So what we noticed, probably about 80% of all purchases are done for the soft cover,
Right.
softback. But there's a particular aisle of audience who just like, okay, we want this kind of more expensive tool.
Mm.
And
Mm.
usually hard copy is a marketing play where we make it more expensive for a reason, so we can just people can just focus on one thing.
Yeah.
I'm revealing some secrets right now, but this is really usually what it is. You don't want to make them close, where people are like, well, should I get one? Should I get the other one? And then we just
Mm.
leave it, don't get either.
You need that third choice, right? There's a lot of studies done
Yeah,
with people typically
you,
choose the long.
you need their free boxes. Just choose one of them. That's it. The best piece of popcorn.
Yeah. And how do you measure success? Like the book and getting it out into the market is one key metric, of course, but becoming number one, I guess, is a metric in many cases, or is it very individual?
It's individual because
Mm.
we know right away in the very beginning because when we are asking about what do you want to achieve with this book, what
Right.
potential does it have? Does it have the potential to sell tens and hundreds of thousands of copies, right? In most scenarios, that is not true, right?
Mm.
But it has potential. Doesn't mean it doesn't have potential for making money, right? Doesn't have that, but doesn't mean that, right? Because there are many ways to leverage your book. But
Mm.
you said it right, Wayne. One of the key metrics is having that book exactly the way you want, actually, right? It's not just becoming a number one. Number
Right.
one, becoming number one is part of that. You want to have this, symbol. You want to know that you surpass the others in your category. That's a big part of that,
Mm.
and you want to see that book alive. You don't want that book just to die, and more important than that, you want to see positive feedback.
Right.
People
Right.
love to see positive feedback for their book, how great that book is, which is reviews, of course, other people feedback in terms of more verbal, these kind of things. So people measure it in different ways, but
Mhm.
we always make it very clear in the beginning.
Once we've gone and we've released the book, as you mentioned right at the beginning, that's not the end of the journey. In many cases, it's the easier part has been done, and now the tough part begins. How do you then continue to promote? And what is there a typical life span of a book?
Well, there isn't, right? We always try to work with topics that solve problems,
Mhm.
and it's a fundamental thing. There are some books that have we get it's that like that rock, round rock. You can just keep pushing it, right? You just give it some
Yep.
fuel, have a good truck to pull it, just keeps rolling. That's marketing, right? We do some email marketing. We have really very good Amazon advertising team. We
Mhm.
really know how to push that book for a lot ahead and get ahead
Yep.
with that book. Uh, some books just don't have that potential. People have to understand, if you're gonna have a book about aviation or you're gonna have a book about rocket ships, and I'm making an extreme example, there are examples in between.
Yes.
There aren't gonna be tens of thousands of readers every single month or even every single year.
Yep.
Uh, we always want to make sure that there is a problem in the marketplace. There is a specific audience for that book, and that book can stay alive, meaning
mm,
people still care about it. People, that book still ranks when people are searching for a solution for that kind of problem. Some
right.
people really don't, some people are not really solving a particular problem. Those books, once they have a very short lifespan because,
Hmm.
there isn't, people are not looking for that solution, or that book isn't really a solution. It's just like, for example, like a memoir. Rarely a memoir, unless it's a very famous person, solves a particular problem. Now, there are
Mm,
exceptions,
right.
and those exceptions are very big, others are non-existent. Mm, those kind of books, once they reach a bestseller, usually they die in 4, 5, 6 months because they are
Right.
not solving a problem.
Hmm.
And authors have to understand that, and we really have to think, what do you want your book to do? And then the angle changes because most authors, most experts in their field, they have the tools to solve problems. They have the
Right.
potential to show their audience that I'm solving this kind of problem. Some of them, they just choose not to do that, and we cannot do anything about that,
Mm,
us as a company.
right. Right. I understand. And, I've been thinking about sequels, and I have often wondered, is there a perfect timing between releasing book one, let's say we're doing a trilogy, book two, and then book three? It, I know it's a very broad question, and I'm guessing your answer is it depends. But is there a guideline if somebody out there is thinking, okay, I know I've got three books in me, I want to write these three books, they're all going to be sequential. Over what duration should I be targeting?
Then, are you creating a trilogy or something?
Yeah.
Okay, let me ask you. Let me answer your question. Uh, Yes, there is. The answer depends. Of course, it depends, but we can answer what depends on what, right? Probably a few important questions that we have to answer. Question number one is, what is the category of this book?
Hmm.
More as a more broad sense, is it fiction, is it non-fiction, these kind of things, right? Is there a season for the book? Is there a particular season there this book is more solving a more specific problem than not,
Mm.
right? If there is a season, then you have to be aware of that season, and usually you want to publish that book about a month or two before that season starts, right?
Okay.
So if you can do that on an annual basis and prepare for that season, usually the season is annual, you should do that. If you cannot, then you do it every 2 years. If you have the capacity, the team, whatever you need
Mm.
to produce that book, solve that problem.
That answers my question. I know that. So thank you for that. Um, the season uh, item you mentioned there is quite interesting. I had read about that before, but I'd forgotten. So, for instance, uh, my area that I focus on is small business, and so if I write a book about you know how small businesses can succeed, to your point, if I'm writing something specific around the financial aspects in the book, maybe I'll target around the tax time um, as a seasonal component. But I need to give that some consideration, is what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Probably you're looking, and to be more specific, you're looking at two possibilities. You may be looking at the beginning of the year, around February. It's a good
Hmm.
timing usually. Or you're looking at the second part of the year, the end of August, September, where the things start to really ramp up for the Christmas season, and people just love gifting books. But I'll give you another hint. Wayne. For most people, for most listeners here, you shouldn't care about the season. Doesn't matter. You should publish your book. People get like, okay, I'm gonna find a perfect time. No, that's gonna give you 20, 30% boost.
Mm.
If you know how to leverage a 20% boost, kudos to you. That's great. Most people have no idea how to do that, right?
Yeah.
So that season doesn't matter. It's just an excuse to delay something. right? For most of you guys out there, you should see, okay, do I have the time? How much time is gonna take? Do I have a strategy? Do I have the tools? Here's the start, here's the finish time, whenever it is, you know, people should be more concerned about their own goals rather than the season, the year, the the star signs, all these kind of things. You know, they help, but to an extent.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And one of the things I know many novice writers, including myself, when I started, we totally underestimate the length of involvement during the editing phase, or the length of time, the number of reviews, the process involved during that editing, whether it's the initial copy, whether it's the proofreading, whether it's the set out, etc. There's so much involved in that editing phase, is my experience. I don't know how you see it, but what's your thoughts on that?
Well, it really depends how rough the draft was, right?
Right.
How much revision you did during the writing phase. Did you just try to write as fast as you could, and then you just edit and edit and edit and edit, or you do more thinking in the beginning? It really depends, because some people want to get through it as fast as possible. That's one of the ways to do it.
Mm,
What we don't like to do as much of fundamental editing. we
yeah.
would we rather spend a bit more time on revising each milestone, right? Each chapter, see if that drives a point home, if the language is right, And
Mm,
once we get to the editing, there are some structural changes here and there, but there aren't too many because at the end of the day, that is not going to be the factor that's going to, make or break the book. You know,
mm,
we are not competing here for a best written book. People usually don't care about that. People love the professional angle of a book. It has to be high quality. But people usually overestimate that part and they just come up with their book title in the shower instead of spending a couple of weeks on the book title and
mm,
analyzing and thinking about their audience, these kind of things.
yeah.
It's much more difficult to stare at three words and think if they're right, opposed to reread your whole thing, the whole manuscript time and time again. Maybe
Mm,
I'm gonna change this sentence. No, nobody's gonna get to that sentence if they don't like the title. Let's
mm,
worry about one thing at a time. And let's understand the customer's journey, the reader's journey, where it starts, where it's the most important thing, is it chapter one, is the introduction, where it is, and where it ends, right?
right.
How do you keep the reader engaged, right? Is a reader is going to be fascinated about all the nice things that you're going to put in? Maybe. How many readers you're going to push through the book? That's a more important question.
Mm. So many questions come to mind as I listen to you speaking, and I know there is no black and white answer in many cases, but typically for a non-fiction book, is there a number of words that you would suggest for, I don't know if you could even say the average non-fiction business book, but is there a target?
Of course, there's a target. We always say as long as it has to be. I like this phrase. As long as it has to be. Now, what does that mean? For most books, it means between 38 and 45,000 words. I don't know why people like to measure that in pages. Most people do, right? That's probably around 200 pages, 230, right in that ballpark. Business people, business readers tend to have a shorter attention span. They like
Mm,
to get the nuggets out. They don't read the whole thing. Some of them do, right? That's not the most important thing. Value is most important, and there is one question that people always have to answer. And this is where you stop writing. This is where you get rid of all the nonsense from the book. And that is this still relevant?
yeah.
Is this relevant? As long as it's relevant, it should be in a book. The moment it's not relevant anymore, or the bits and pieces that are not relevant,
Yep.
let's stop right there. Let's not prolong the book just for the sake of prolonging it.
Mm. Uh, my guilty is charged in my case because I tend to ramble. So being succinct and putting, you know, being more articulate with the wording is my area that I need to work on. What about when it comes to um, graphics, diagrams? Are you a, a fan of that in business books? I'm sticking with the business focus as a means of enriching the text, or do you prefer less?
Depends on the nature of the book. But for most business books, if it is a business book that is not on the technical side, if
Mm,
it is on a technical side, those things help. There should be visualizations. There should be
right.
those things, the key points, the graphics, probably at least one graphic per chapter that illustrates the most important point. There should be things like that. For the business books that are more lesson driven, self-help,
Mm-hmm.
a combination of business and self-help, those books really don't need graphics. And sometimes just graphics that they don't do anything. And again, we have to come back to that question: is it relevant?
Is
If
it
a
relevant?
graphic is relevant, and you can take a step further, does it make it better?
Yep.
Does the graphic make it better? If it doesn't make it better, you don't do that. You don't include that. It's just like if I'm speaking, do additional words make my speech better? It doesn't make it better. You just stop right there. You move to a next point. What do
Mm,
you want your audience? What does your audience want? What kind of result do they want? What do they want to hear? That's the same thing with book. And with a book, you have much more time and resources usually to take out the nonsense, take out the all the things that don't matter. When we are speaking, we don't have that luxury. When
mm,
we are writing, we do. So let's not add things that unless specific books. There are some picture books. There are some books that are have that angle. For most
mm.
business books, no. Most business books should have zero or close to zero graphics.
Okay, got it. So let's move into the challenging topic for many businesses around technology. Um, Benefit or a curse in your mind when it comes to writing?
When you're asking about technology, when you're talking about AI specifically, or you're talking about something broader than AI.
Well, I mean, there are so many tools. You know, if we broke down the whole process, we could list pages of different tools that we can use to support us during the process. So we can go with the writing assistants like the Chat GPT forms. If we're talking about the editing, probably the most common one, Grammarly or something like that. There's all these different technological support tools out
Yes.
there. Are they a benefit to the novice writer?
Well, we have to probably differentiate, right? We're talking about writers and authors, right? Because
Mm,
we are looking at tools, and we have only one rule in our company because we want to use the best.
mhm.
We never use AI in the writing process,
Right.
meaning we don't use AI for writing. All the other tools, it's almost like you would use a shovel when there's a tractor out there, right? You know, it's just like you always have a reason to use the shovel. You can do that, yes,
Mm,
but why wouldn't you, use these amazing formatting tools?
yes.
Why you wouldn't use an amazing grammar correction tools? You know, of course we have editors, we have But why wouldn't you equip them with the best tools
Yeah.
so we can make a decision? It becomes a decision making rather than a manual labor waste
Right.
of time, as I call it, right?
Yeah.
So, other than, and there's a reason why I wouldn't suggest authors to also use AI for writing, is because it's all about customer experience. And at the end of the day, what matters is customers' feedback.
Hmm.
The moment a reader has a sense, the text or anything that can be something AI,
Yeah.
something plagiarized, something not original, they lose all trust.
Mm.
They lose, the whole I'm excited kind of phase about the book, about reading the book.
Right.
And we're not willing to take that risk. We're not willing to take that risk. We believe that the only thing, if it is authentic, it has to be the voice of the book.
Hmm.
We
Hmm.
can have many different AI voices. They can speak in different patterns. But at the end of the day, the fundamental part, why the reason why people want a book is because they want that book to be a piece of them.
Right.
And we don't believe that, at least right now, maybe something is going to change in a decade or so,
Mm.
that something that is created by a machine can be a piece of you. It doesn't mean it cannot get the job done. There's a difference. But at the end of the day, and what we learned throughout the years, feeling proud of your own work, feeling
Right.
having that sense of pride, which I believe in this case is a good thing, uh, in just reading through it, memorizing something, remembering something from a past, feeling the feelings and authenticity of it is extremely important.
Mm.
Outside of a manuscript, we use all the best tools possible. Research, title research, keyword
Yeah.
research, all the different things we want to use the best. And this is the only area where we don't do it.
Mm. Understand. And makes a lot of sense as well. What's on the horizon for high value author or yourself in particular? Anything coming up? Anything exciting you want to share with the listener?
Well, not something in particular. We are, of course, helping people. We're helping more and more people every month. Probably we have our internal milestones. Of course, we want to reach and help a specific number of people. We have a goal of helping a million authors, a million
Wow.
people to become authors. This is a long-term play. So we are working hard on creating systems and creating teams of people who can sustain that growth, maintain the uniqueness, maintain the personalization. Back in the day, I used to take every single conversation and we used to be a part of everything. Now I don't even know what's happening. Sometimes, as long as good things are happening, I'm happy. And yeah, probably this is what it is. Of course, we're adding something extra. We learned that some of our authors who become bestsellers, they are looking, to speak, right? So we are working with some speaking things that we are doing also. Once the book
Hmm.
is out, these kind of things, then sometimes we take it to the next level. But yeah, this is where we are going, and hopefully we're gonna uh, achieve some great things in the next 2, 3, 5 years. We are here
Very,
for a long run.
very ambitious goal, but very admirable target. So wishing you well on that. Any specific advice for a listener out there who's thinking about writing a book? They haven't taken the first step. They're still on the sideline. Anything you would suggest to them that may help them move forward?
I think that's a very good question, Wayne. I think reason why and finding enough reasons why to take the next step is the first thing that we have to do, right? And we should do it just once. We shouldn't come back to those reasons. You just sit down on a good day,
Mm,
and just write down the reasons why. Not on a bad day, on a good day, right? Because life is about moving forward, not about moving backwards. And
mm,
I am yet to meet a person, no matter what kind of investment they made, time or money, or both, or add some additional things, who became an author and regrets becoming an author and getting that job done,
mm.
right? And I think that statement in itself has enough power to motivate some of the people listening here to pull the trigger and say, heck, at least I'm gonna try to do something. I'm gonna make something great. I'm gonna be proud of that thing. I'm gonna get it done.
Yeah, yeah, great answer. Well, to that point, Ben, where can people go and track you down if they're looking to take that step? How can they work with you? Where's the best place to find you?
Very simple, highvalueauthor.com, or they can just find me, Ben Cena, on LinkedIn. You can send me a personal message if they want to, or they can just go to their website and go to a website and find one of the many buttons where we can click, and they're gonna speak to my team or myself sometimes.
No, very good. As you said, it truly is a really rewarding process to finally get that book out there, get it out of your head, out of your heart, onto paper and published. Is For me, it was a journey of a lifetime, but so gratifying and satisfying once it's done. So I highly recommend it to everybody. Not without its challenges, not without its pains, but the end result makes it all worthwhile. So
And
Ben,
by the way,
yeah,
so probably I forgot about that, and my book coming out is also the first one this year, from our company and from myself. It's also gonna
wow,
be this year, so probably this is the next thing that is probably also worth mentioning.
your partner will probably be calling you up after this episode releases and say, what about mentioning our book? So do you have a title yet? Do you have a deadline when you're going to release? How far advanced are you?
Yeah, so it's probably gonna be around late summer. We have a
Okay,
title. We're gonna keep it a secret for now.
great.
But yeah, so everything is pretty much prepared and ready. We're gonna
Well,
jump on a wave in a season.
we may have to come back together when it's released and dissect the book to some extent and see just how the professional brings it to life. So I look forward to that. All right, then. Well,
Why,
great
why not?
connecting.
Why not? We're gonna break down the details. We're gonna break it down to the details and share with the audience.
Yeah, sounds like a plan. Well, we'll definitely stay connected in that regard, and we'll make it happen. Wonderful conversation. Thank you for that, and very insightful. Hopefully, our audience gets a lot out of this conversation. I'm sure they will. But thank you for being on the ET project.
Thank you, Vane.
So what are you waiting for? Hit the subscribe button below and click on the bell icon so I can pop up in your feed occasionally with a great tip for your ultimate growth.